Hello and welcome to Should You Watch, a podcast where we watch the currently airing shows that people are talking about, and we answer the time-worn question, should you watch? Is it worth your time? I am all the Sith. I'm also known as Alan. Welcome, everybody. I'm joined as always by all the Jedi in one person. It's Magellan.
I'm just Magellan from nowhere, actually.
Blech. And for this episode of Should You Watch, we are joined by someone who is, according to my notes, seems like a letter so much here, all the Bith? Like the alien race from Star Wars? Okay.
It's over, Alan. I have the high gain. My track is going to be so hot. No one will hear you too. It's just me this time.
Unbearable. That's 6 from Scanline Media, if you don't already know.
Yeah.
Welcome, 6.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
The Bith are the ones who play Jizz, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm Ace, so I don't with Jizz.
Okay. It's another month of Should You Watch, folks, and that means that we watched another TV show all the way through, and we're going to tell you whether or not you should watch it. This month, for the month of June 2022, we're talking Star Wars, one of our favorite things to talk about here. And in particular, we're talking about Obi-Wan Kenobi, which is a 6-episode miniseries on Disney Plus, starring Ian McGregor reprising his classic role as Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi. I want to start out the gate by asking the classic question: what are your thoughts on Star Wars, Magellan?
Okay, let me footnote some things. So a few Should You Watch episodes ago, we talked about the Book of Boba Fett. On our Patreon, we've discussed Star Wars in a few different ways. We have ranked Star Wars films. We piloted The Mandalorian with 6. We did after watching it, a review of The Rise of Skywalker. My thoughts on Star Wars are well documented. Suffice to say, I'm a big fan who I would say I was a lapsed fan for a while. Kind of ever since The Rise of Skywalker, I've been not super hot on Star Wars and expressing my love of it, but I'm returning to it and rediscovering it, and that's been really nice, thanks to this show. So yeah.
And it's happy to have you back. And I know we have repeatedly discussed Star Wars, and people already know in general our takes. So I will say the same. Big Star Wars fan. I guess lapsed in the sense that I don't like broadcast my Star Wars fandom, but I've watched almost all of the movies, and I'm watching Clone Wars with a podcast right now, and like I'm engaged with the brand, but I wouldn't consider myself a turbo fan. I like it a lot. I like it when the lightsabers go, that's pretty fun to me. But 6, you're new to Should You Watch, so I think you should let the people know in general. What's your history with Star Wars?
I would just, if you had to summarize my Star Wars experience, I would say absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Yeah.
Whenever I actually watch Star Wars things, I start to like it less and less, and then I walk away and I play games or I talk about it, and I'm like, man, Star Wars rules. There's a new show on. I'm gonna sort of repeat forever. When I was a child, one of the VHSs we had was the original trilogy on VHS, and by the time we retired our VHS player, those tapes were fucked up because I didn't do anything weird to them. I just watched them so many times that the sound started to get really messed up.
Wow.
So, I watched those a fucking lot. Excuse me for the language.
George Lucas, as we know, a person who's big on sound and sound design. So specifically, though, regarding Obi-Wan Kenobi, this series that we're here talking about, requires you to have a bit of a appreciation for and understanding of the Star Wars prequels. Which all of us do. We're all in some way or another prequels fans here. And so I think that was what pushed Obi-Wan Kenobi to the top of our list of shows, is like, okay, any other Star Wars show, especially after the disappointment that was the back half of the Book of Boba Fett, I would have been like, yeah, okay. There's that Cassian Andor series coming out in August, and I was like, yeah, I will look at it, but I'm not excited about it. I just feel very apathetic about the state of Star Wars right now. But you put Ian McGregor in the costume, and you say that Hayden Christensen might be in the show, maybe not. He's in all of the marketing though, and you say it's a show called Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I click play, and so that was like where I came into on this, is really, really excited to see a live action thing revolving around characters from the prequels and how they change between episodes 3 and 4. Because I think that's where the most rich narrative material has been for Star Wars, at least since the Disney acquisition, is like the post-Vader, pre-New Hope era. So I went into this with a lot of excitement. Were you, I know you said like when you get into Star Wars, you're not as excited because it's more fun from the rear view. Were you excited about Obi-Wan? You actually reached out to me and asked if you could be on this one. So,
I mean, I'm always ready.
It?
I always come into it like ready for it to be really good this time. And you know, I'm not allowed to say how it turned out yet. Perhaps my tone of voice gives certain things away. But I went in like, I mean, I was like, you know what? It's going to be short, and short is, in my experience, good with TV because it takes a lot of skill to make something go long and stay good. You certainly can do it, but it's easier to deliver a short and good thing. And so I'm like, good, it's short. Perfect. Also, Ian McGregor. And that's kind of all I needed here. The Hayden Christensen stuff had me excited, and I feel a little misled on that front. But yeah, I mean, it's just they had a pitch that even with my current suspicions and misgivings about what they're doing with Star Wars, they had a pitch that got me. So,
yes. And Magellan, of course, the #1 prequel fan that I know personally. I'm sure you saw this, and as we watched the first 2 episodes the night that they came out, or the day that they came out, in person, I recall us repeatedly just saying hello there as if waiting for it to drop. But we'll talk about that specific little nugget because it's like the prequels have such a mimetic potential nowadays. You know, they came out at the right time. Over on our Patreon, we read some unsolicited advice recently, and one of the ones that I still think about is the best period of culture for you is wherever things were when you were 10 years old. And no wonder we like the Star Wars prequels because I was about 10 when episode 3 came out. So, you know, the prequels are in our minds. They're in our thoughts and hearts.
Yeah, and I think just on that note, something that was kind of a bummer about the sequel trilogy when that was coming out is they just didn't want to acknowledge that the prequels happened, and we're kind of like, nah, no, it's all about, you know,
4,
New
5, 6.
Hope. It's about Darth Vader. It's about the Death Star. Hey, Leia's here. Look, it's Han. That was what the sequels were trying to do, was get back to the original trilogy. And so it's nice to see Disney Star Wars media being like, yeah, no, the prequels happened and they're part of it, and we're gonna do this now.
It's weird to see them do that. Like, it was such a weird choice because I think, like, I am of mixed feelings about the prequel trilogy. I am younger than or older than y'all. Well, that's the word, older. And so for me, the prequels are not exactly sacred texts. I have mixed feelings, but I do think, like, regardless of your feelings on them, there are so many cool ideas that if I was making something in the Star Wars universe, like, not referencing the prequels would just seem like a ludicrous choice.
Right. Yeah, they're not great movies necessarily, but it's kind of what you were saying before, Six, of like when you get some distance from them and you're talking about the world building present in them, the storytelling moments or the themes and ideas, like they're pretty rich films, I think, at least rich enough to be on par with the original trilogy in having conversations about what Star Wars is, and what it means. So it was cool to see, and I was excited to see a show come out to try to bridge in the most official way we've seen that stretch of time between 3 and 4, even though I think that to some extent that period of Star Wars, the timeline is like oversaturated, to be honest. I would rather have this story than, you know, a bunch of the other things that have already oversaturated that period of time. So I think we should talk about it,
Yeah.
And see what we thought about it.
It's a more personal story for a more civilized age. Whoever writes these scripts is just so silly. let's talk about the pilot. We're now going to be talking about
Yeah.
the pilot to Obi-Wan Kenobi and getting into the details of it. So I feel like opening up on a 6-minute recap of the prequel trilogy really set the tone here and absolutely threw me for a loop because, first of all, like you were saying, Magellan, the sequel trilogy is not acknowledging the prequels much. Made me feel like, wait, what? The prequels are real. They're not a collective Mandela effect dream that we had. These are like movies that
Yeah.
exist
I
and
saw
directors
them.
think about. I saw them, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like weirded out by that. But I also the inclusion of some new footage. We saw a little bit more of like the youngling Order 66 stuff and just a little bits here and there. I respect their restraint early on in this pilot to not even show our man Obi-Wan for, I think it's about 13 minutes into this pilot when we first see him. And, you know, the show is named after him. It's a classic narrative technique to not show the thing you want for a really long time. But you know it's coming. And I really enjoyed watching Obi-Wan just be like meat packer in the deserts of Tatooine for a little while. I found this really charming and fun for a little bit here. Did the show ingratiate itself to y'all the same way?
I have beef.
So does Obi-Wan, apparently. He's making it. He's cooking it.
Well, so just quickly, part of it, like, I think the idea of, like, putting off the thing that people are there for, in this case, Ian McGregor, not even Obi-Wan, Ian McGregor, works better when you have stuff in the meantime that's worth eating. And I find so exasperating the tendency of the problem with people filling out this period, the between, you know, prequels and main
You're gonna
series,
say what I agree with, I think.
is that the Empire doesn't make any sense. Like you have this scene of the Inquisitors, and it could be a really cool scene. It's a very classic setup, but honestly is always just a very like tense and exciting setup where the Inquisitors come down and they're hunting for a Jedi and they're interrogating the dude at the bar, and you know there's a Jedi in the room. And then the Inquisitors are like, well, the thing about the Jedi is they're such good people. They're just such wonderful people that they can't help themselves but do good things. And you're like, this isn't what you would say if they're their enemies and you believe in hunting them down. This doesn't make any sense. You're all mustache twirling, and you can't world build on a mustache. It's not very big. It only fits in your face.
It is difficult to build a world on a mustache. That's true.
Yeah, I feel similarly. I've never loved like any sort of Inquisitors group of characters or plot. The game Jedi Fallen Order is set during the same time, and the Inquisitors are like the central antagonists of that game. And it's one of those things that like, and this is, I think, a core. I'm going to say I really like the show overall. And like, I would say if you like Star Wars and Star Wars movies, give it a shot and like expect that it's not going to like blow your mind in a way you've never expected before, but we'll talk more about that. But the thing that I have sort of a misgiving about is it's a prequel in the sense that there are only like so many things it can do or can actually happen. And so like, you know that these Inquisitors are here, but like they can only be so significant because Luke never met any of them in the original trilogy or heard that they existed. They can't kill Obi-Wan because he's alive later. And so it's this weird dramatic thing where it's like, look at all these bad guys and look at their spinning lightsabers. Isn't that freaking scary? Anyway, they're not going to hurt anybody that you know because they're not allowed to by narrative superpower or whatever.
And there are ways you can work with this, right? By like either introducing, you know, characters to have stakes for, right? Of like, okay, you don't know what happened to these people by the time of the original trilogy, so we can have things happen to them. They do a little of that. And then also you can make it not about, like, not make the tension of the scene is so-and-so gonna die. You can create other kinds of stakes. And one of my biggest problems with this series is they never stop trying to make that the stakes, even when it's like, no, there's like, you could make this story 100 times. You never would do this. This is a waste of my time.
Right.
Like poetry, it rhymes though, because we're talking about this at the top of the episode, and it is going to come up later.
This is the only time you're allowed to say like poetry or rhymes. Everybody, you can have one more, Alan. Everybody gets one more.
Well, I think we should all just write down when we use one of the lines, and then it's sort of banned for everybody for the rest of the episode.
It's like
we
a
won't
band
run
pick.
out.
Like, I have
We won't
to
run
use
out.
stupid ways so that you guys can't say it later. Yeah.
Okay, this is mine. I hate you, and I'm like covered in lava and dying.
Apology
And
accepted, Captain Allen.
Ooh.
But Inquisitors aside, I really liked the pilot because there was that magic of like, we're here, we're in Star Wars again. They're telling me that the prequels matter. Obi-Wan's cutting up meat and putting it in his pocket, and he keeps doing it every day. Like, seeing him be such a loser and a hermit was great because like it raises this really interesting dilemma that the show doesn't really solve, of like, if you want to stay alive, you need to disappear, right? And that's kind of like the thing of this first episode between Obi-Wan and the Jedi guy who ends up getting killed by the Inquisitors.
Benny Safdie, played by Benny Safdie, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Co-director of Uncut Gems, sorry.
Right. This is how I win. And that now nobody can say that. But it raises this really interesting thing of like, okay, in order for Obi-Wan Kenobi to live from 3 to 4 for the span of 19 years or whatever it is, he has to spend all of that time like holed up in a cave, not doing any good for anybody. And at that point, it's like, all right, thanks, man. Thanks for surviving, I guess, but we really could have used your help. And so I think that establishes a really engaging theme and set of stakes for him as a character of like, how do I help people and protect the people who need to be protected, but also like keep myself alive in the process of doing that.
My last note about the Inquisitors is that in this pilot, we see them first, which establishes Riva as a character. Again, in a very like classical, not very unique way of like, hey, we're the Jedi in this town. You got to tell us. Oh, but they're so nice, so we're gonna trick them into doing something. I also watched most of, if not all of, Star Wars Rebels, which was the first like visual appearance of the Inquisitors before Jedi Fallen Order. And I've never understood the fandom. Yeah, like the spinny lightsaber is very cool. And this bald guy that's played, that's the other Inquisitor, is like in Rebels straight up. He looks a lot different, obviously, because this is not a cartoon. But, I think there's something cool about like Vader and the Empire having these like higher up lackeys beyond stormtroopers who are actually a threat and like intimidating. But there's so many of them, and they don't really have like very well established rules and like a hierarchy between them, that it just feels like, in a video game sense, like these are just higher up enemies than your average stormtrooper, but below your Darth Vaders and your Palpatines. So I felt like kind of mixed about seeing the Inquisitors again. It is cool. Like, I think we'll talk about Riva a lot, but the other big thing in this pilot that I also wanted to talk about is the inclusion of a young Princess Leia, who forms the other core of our story here.
She's the best part of the show.
Oh, no.
What?
Yes. Give me
you
the
didn't
meat.
like Leia?
I mean, okay, first of all, I have a thing about child actors.
She's
generally.
incredible.
Okay, I'm sorry, I guess I liked her.
No, you're allowed to have your own opinion. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's like, I mean, it doesn't help that the tone setter for this, I mean, like, her dodging her responsibilities, like, hell yeah, go for it. And then we get, like, the most Scooby-Doo chase, where it founded on the fact that a person can't lower his arms. Like, and my problem with it is, one, because she's around, they feel like they can't go certain places with the tone. And then two, I mean, like, it's just adding one more character who we know nothing can happen to.
Yeah, I can see that. I think what I really liked her performance. I was like surprised by some of the nuance that she brought to it. I think ultimately what this show does well, like the things I end up liking the most about it, are not things that it's doing that surprised me, but things that it does where it's like, okay, yeah, I was like inferring something like that from the movies, and now you've competently created that thing. And so seeing like Leia need, and we'll talk more about this in the later episodes, but need Obi-Wan's help, meet Obi-Wan, and now have context for help me Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope. Like, I liked seeing that and having that, and seeing how does Leia go from I'm a little princess girl on Alderaan to like, fuck you, Grand Moff Tarkin, let me spit in your face. Like, I'm not telling you where anything is. It's like kind of a fun arc to see, but it's not. Yeah, we know that like Leia's not going to get hurt or killed or even tortured, really, or told mean things, because she's a sweet little girl. So
she's a literal 10-year-old.
Yeah,
I think once you accept the premise of one, Leia's going to be around a lot, and two, you're getting a child actor, which again, I just have a thing about. I think it is pretty well done. I do definitely think for a child actor, she does a very good job.
Yeah, but it's just weird to have a child actor, you're saying? Like to have a kid?
Yeah, I basically have never found a child actor convincing in my life.
That's fair.
So
I think
for terrible.
For what she's given, she does surprisingly well. I think that Obi-Wan and Leia are the two performances in this series that I felt the most all right with, characters that are from the prequels, that is, because neither of them are just like in a grand narrative sense, they are barreling towards who they are in the original trilogy, but it's only like, spoilers, a little bit later that they really dig into like, they're going to say the line, they're going to get the outfit, they're going to do the thing. Like, these are just characters whose lives at a certain point in time we are focusing on, and people, those who are really keen, will notice little like nods at who they will become, but it's not being like I really wanted to say like, oh, Leia never does the hair buns thing, but the show, we'll talk about it. But in this episode, in this pilot, Leia is just like who Leia is at 10 years old. She's rebellious. She has questions about authority. She's got a little bit of a mouth, like, and she's funny and like explores a lot and can, dodge people and fight, kind of. And I enjoy that. I was like, okay, yeah, Leia's a character, and a child is playing this character, and I'm not like actively annoyed by that. I think it's fine. But that covers the pilot. She does get kidnapped, and then we establish that's our stakes. Is Obi-Wan gets his very, very first year, our only hope. Again, ding the line, because what's his name? Jimmy Smits, yeah. Jimmy Smits, the God, is back as Bail Organa, and he's like, hey, you have to rescue her. I know you just started being a hermit 10 years ago, but I'm going to need to pull you out of hermitude for a little bit. And we're off to the races. So let's expand our spoiler scope here. We're talking about episodes 2 to 5, 2 to 4?
I think 2 to 4, yeah.
Yeah, 2 to 4. Magellan, at this point in the series, because the first 2 came out together, so 2 we had a more like closer familiarity with from the beginning. I started thinking about the structure of this series, because one of the biggest like critiques or just comments on how Disney Plus especially is handling these like 6-episode series, both for Marvel and Star Wars, is that they're one long movie. And I definitely got that sense watching like 3 and 4, where it's like, this is a chase scene episode. This is a rescue episode. And in a movie, that would be like a long scene and it'd be interesting, and I would move on from it. But to branch those out to full episodes, you kind of feel like, okay, I just need the next bit of the story. Like, this is where I started to just want the whole series to be released. Did y'all find the same, or did you find more completion in each of the episodes, like beginning, middle, and end?
I have like 3... Or I have four discrete thoughts on that question. Sorry.
Your brain's amazing.
Okay. I'll buy you a little time.
Yeah, let me just jot these
when
down.
I started watching, there were 5 episodes out.
Okay.
Yeah, you
And when I
basically
finished the
didn't have
fifth
to do.
episode, when I finished the fifth episode, honestly, I won't spoil anything, but I was like, that's almost a good place to leave the series. I guess they'll have a sixth one though.
I have made it quite a long time not watching current shows when people are watching them and being exposed to the zeitgeist conversations about things like this, whether it's, not watching The Mandalorian or not really being a part of big event television moments, or not really being up on the Marvel movies or things like that. And so the experience of watching this week to week and then going to YouTube and watching a bunch of people complain about how episode 3 or 4 was a filler episode was like brain melting. And I hated it. I really, really got so annoyed because like the arc of it was people are like, oh, we're not getting enough of this, or like, why aren't they explaining this, or like, why isn't this happened? And then all of those things did happen or get explained in later episodes, and it's like, guys, it's TV. You gotta like wait for them to do it before. I don't know. So it just felt like there was a lot of critical conversation. This is disappointing, whatever, in this stretch of episodes that I felt was a little silly. But the other side of that coin for me is that having not been a part of like really TV zeitgeisty event television stuff all that much, being able to participate in the water cooler conversation about Obi-Wan Kenobi with my students, I'm a high school teacher, with my students and my colleagues and stuff, was really fun. And like I have a lightsaber and I brought it to work when they were taking final exams, and everyone was like, whoa, it's a cool lightsaber. And then my principal brought his lightsaber today, and it's one of the ones that makes sound effects and talks, and it was really cool. And I watched 2 of these episodes at work or 3 of them at work, like on a lunch break or something. Like it was fun to watch this week to week. So from a storytelling perspective, there's a conversation to be had about like, could this have been condensed or been released at once? And I'm really torn about it because I think there was a dark side and a light side to it, if you'll allow that.
That's one.
I don't think anybody's like, hey, there's a dark side. And you heard of this Force thing? There's a dark side and a light side to it. Kid.
I think that was Quinlan Voss. That sounds like Quinlan Voss to me.
Yeah,
God, they reference Quinlan Voss in these episodes.
I thought Quinlan was going to show up the way that he was like, Quinlan was here? What? My guy Quinlan? What the heck?
Whatever. Okay, listen, whether or not you liked this series, how much better would it have been if midway through they introduced the Surfer Bro Jedi?
That would have been so sick.
Surfer Bro, who goes on to like work with like, oh, sorry, I don't want to spoil all of Clone Wars for people. He has such a good arc. Oh God. And then like after post Clone Wars, Quinlan Voss rules. I'm so glad that they name dropped Quinlan Voss in a real thing. That made me feel good.
Those were 2 of my thoughts. These other 2 are quick. So I watched a lot of the show with my friend Carson, who the other really fun thing about Obi-Wan was like, we got to have like the Star Wars conversation with each other, which felt like a new phase of our friend relationship. Like, oh, thank God we both share the same opinions about The Last Jedi. Phew. And now he's playing through KOTOR and stuff. It's awesome. But he put me onto this discourse about how each of the 6 episodes of this show have ways that they echo the 6 movies, which when you first hear that, you're like, yeah. And then you realize that like they're probably kind of doing that on purpose, and it's a little ham-fisted at parts. But that was interesting. We could talk about that. And I think the other thing is, the last thing I have to say is, Star Wars movies themselves are like pretty episodic movies. You know, you could make the argument like this should just be one long movie, but like go watch a Star Wars movie. It, does these like wipes across the screen, and then it's like, okay, now back to this episode where Obi-Wan is on Camino. Okay, now it's time for episode 5 where we're talking about how we hate sand or whatever. Like Star Wars movies are paced in a not normal movie way. And so it didn't feel super weird for there to be like 6 episodes and that's a movie. It just felt like they didn't have the story to fill the time.
Yeah, it's a constant issue with these like streaming shows is they have to keep people subscribed for as long as possible, so they basically write a movie and then add in stuff, as I understand it.
Right. That's what it felt like. Yeah.
Which, it's a reality of what happens when we do Should You Watch is like we're watching shows that come out currently, and shows that come out currently are often released in a really weird way. Not to say the old shows aren't released weirdly as well, but yeah. 6, there was some cool stuff in episodes, these episodes here.
4.
Yeah.
Oh, there was?
Oof. Big
What about Kumail? What do you think of Kumail?
Who?
Kumail Nanjiani? He was like the sort of fake Jedi guy who was scamming people.
Okay. I just have him. I don't know actors. I just have him as hot.
Oh, okay. He was a funny guy.
Didn't like him. The performance I liked is, I mean, not even performance. The character work I liked was in episode 3 when we got the guy who's just the trucker who likes the Empire. That was
Played by
such
Zach
good.
Braff.
That was great because it's just like, oh look, here's a person who isn't a complete Saturday morning cartoon who's just like, I don't know, you gotta hand it to the Empire, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, we all knew people like that during certain points in U.S. politics or world politics. It's just like, yeah, no, this is what it actually looks like, and I really appreciated that. The other thing, but we're gonna get to talk about this a lot more, is whenever it's time for Vader to perform action, I really like the way they handle it.
Yeah. There was a lot of hype about this show before it came out about like Obi-Wan Kenobi, the show, is going to have not 1, not 2, but 3 major fight scenes between Obi-Wan and Vader. And the way that actually manifested was a flashback fight scene and then 2 completely pitch black fight scenes in the series in 4 and 6, I believe. But like, I was excited. And I liked seeing Vader. And I like that they got James Earl Jones back. They did the work to get the right people back, by the way. They got like Owen and Beru back. They got Jimmy Smits. They like knew these are the people from the prequels that people care about a lot. And of course McGregor. But it's where the new characters come in that you actually get stakes, because like you were saying earlier, 6, these are the characters who can die. It's another reality of a show being a prequel is like, okay, who here has plot immunity? Well, Obi-Wan can't die. Vader can't die. Leia can't die. Okay, who do we have left? Inquisitor Reva can die, but she goes through an arc before and that doesn't even pan out that way. And I wanted to ask, because there was a lot of talk, about Reva and Moses Ingram, the actress who plays her. A lot of just racist shitbags out there, unacceptable behavior, people criticizing this character for the way she looks and whatnot. But like, did we like this idea of a reforming Inquisitor, or rather as we learn in 4 and 5, like a Inquisitor who was a Padawan? Did we find that exciting, engaging, interesting at all?
I was not like super hot on Reva as a character at the very beginning, just because I don't like the Inquisitors. Like, I don't think it's a Reva thing. I think the Inquisitors are just a weird group of characters. And so it was hard for me to because I think the thing that is plot immunity about Reva is that like Darth Vader has plot immunity, and so she has this sort of like ambitious climb to try to be Vader's pal or maybe kill him or whatever, and we know that doesn't happen. So it was hard for me to buy into that for her, but I did like seeing someone so angry and willing to like kind of make really drastic choices to find Obi-Wan, because it helps us to understand how could this guy who's been so careful get found. And it's because there's somebody who's like kind of operating with a ferocity and an unpredictability that nobody had really summoned up prior to that point. And I think that brings back out of Anakin or Darth Vader that same sort of rawness that he had years ago. which I think is cool. And I think the Reva story ends up going places that are interesting, but I wasn't like, she wasn't the character I was the most interested in until later in the show, I think.
I think the thing that worked for me with Reva was actually like the thing I was saying earlier about like the stakes you can create is from Reva from the start. It's like she is not going to be a going concern, right? By the end of this series, she will have either disappeared or been killed, right? And so I think the show does a good job of, for the most part, not making it about like, oh man, is she going to survive this scene? It's more watching her arc and trying to figure out what she's going to do, that like which landmine she's going to step on, you know? Like she is playing with she's playing with lots of fire. Which one's going to really burn her?
Right. Because you see her kill the Grand Inquisitor in episode 2, and you're like, oh shit. Like or kill, maybe he's dead. Who knows? We'll find out in episode 5. He's not dead. He's in Rebels. he's
in Rebels, right?
But you see her stab him there, and yeah, you're like, oh my god, okay, she could do anything, and she could get killed by anybody because she's making enemies all over the place, and that is fun to watch, for sure. And it's in line with some other kind of like, I think, suspenseful things, like when they're on the truck with the stormtroopers and stuff, and it's like, I know that these stormtroopers aren't going to kill Obi-Wan and Leia, but they could find out who they are. This fight scene could get kind of tense. I don't know what could happen, and so Reva was part of that energy that I think worked here and there.
I don't know why they cast Sun Kang, by the way, as fifth brother. He does look sick. He's the other Inquisitor that's with her.
His hat is awesome.
His hat's that's the whole thing. I love a guy with a hat. I love an odd job type.
Yeah.
Underutilized though. Yeah. And the thing is, like, the show just kind of starts throwing in 2, 3, and 4 side characters that you're like, okay, you don't have plot immunity, but I don't know why you matter. Like Kumail, like Zach Braff, which Zach Braff's character is there because it's funny, and like you said, Six, it's interesting to see what does an average person who believes in the Empire sound like and look like and act like. But then we get, Indira Varma's character.
Is that Tala?
I believe so, yes.
It's
like, why, guys? You got a great actress here. She's in Game of Thrones. She's really good in that show. And I ask myself, like, why set up these rebels, I understand stakes. I understand, like, we need to make characters around Obi-Wan do things and react to things, but I just didn't care.
and despite her, like, there's already her being like generic, right? But what really flubs it is in episode 4, just the way they use her throughout episode 4 is she goes undercover so she can be a codec operator and give radio calls from the inside, which is like a pretty underwhelming thing for her to do. And then the real moment is, there's a moment that you could change one line of dialogue and I would care about Tala, where her cover has been blown and Reva is facing her down and is like, why'd you betray us? Like you were one of us. And she says the pithy Marvel one-liner, I was never one of you. Yeah. Yes, you were. And that's important. And if there was there was a moment where you said, like, because it doesn't feel true anymore or something, if you had a thing that told us something about you instead of trying to have the comic book, speech bubble, then I might be able to care about you. But in that moment, it just died.
Yeah, I think my thing with Tala is that I thought the performance was compelling. I thought it was a really cool idea. Like, yeah, if you're going to have this system that helps Jedi escape, makes a lot of sense that you would have someone spying in the Empire. And the moment when they go to the Inquisitor place and the guy's like, do you have the codes or whatever? And she's like, you idiot, I'm here on like some official business you don't even know about, doofus. And he's like, I'm so sorry, please come in. Like, that was pretty fun. But yeah, I don't think I could tell you why she risks her life to do this. And that's a problem, because if I don't know why she does that, then I don't know why I'm supposed to care about it.
Yeah.
Or like why Haja is in this besides Kumail being fun. And like, again, I enjoy episode 2 a lot for the Attack of the Clones-ness of it. And I always am happy to see Kumail get checks, but like, I don't need a comic relief character in this show. I truly do not. I got enough of that from the alien trucker in episode 3, and I didn't feel him necessary. I did like the idea of like there are people who are using the idea of Jedi being long gone to their advantage, to profit and to betray people. That made me feel kind of slimy in the right way.
Yeah, agreed.
But afterwards, it's like, okay, that's the end of his character, right? And then he comes back, and you're like, no, what? Like, I didn't need more.
He just has he has a 720 heel turn. He just pivots like several degrees on heel in one instant.
Yeah,
He does a cool spin.
exactly. He's doing stunts.
Which,
on it.
listen, if this was Tony Hawk, I would appreciate, but it's a story, and I don't understand why this is happening.
That's funny.
And then just in episode 4 to conclude here, like being on Jabeem and then going to Noor, and they're like, oh, we're going to Noor in the Mustafar system. I was like, oh, we're doing something? The only time we've ever seen Mustafar is in one film, and there's a reason we went there. And then like, speaking of we can't do anything bad to Leia, like why do we have a nearly torturing Leia sequence where we put her into the torture device for Obi-Wan to free her? They're not going to torture a child on a TV show.
Yeah, but I think there's something to that because they do torture Leia later when she's like an adult. So
Yeah.
It says something about how do you get someone who, like, she's I think 19 or 20 or something in episode 4. How do you have that strength of will when you're that young? And it helps us to understand, like, yeah, nothing, like, no physical harm comes to her here, but she stares straight in the face of the bad guys and is put in this really scary position for the first time, and like comes out of it with this sense of resolve that I think helps us to understand like who Leia is and what's cool about her in the original trilogy.
I would be more impressed if she wasn't being interrogated by Reva, who is trying to be good cop, bad cop, and confused cop all at the same time.
All at once.
Yeah, she's not that good at it.
Yeah. And that's tough too. I liked from an action perspective, I did like episode 4 a lot, people getting rescued and playing the Inquisitor for a fool and being like, I'm never going to tell people. I had a plot question about episode 4. I don't know if this was a background detail that wasn't meant to be answered. It seems like on the ship that they're rescuing her on, they are imprisoning people in carbonite. Is there like a
No, it's see-through, so it's not carbonite because Empire Strikes Back hasn't happened yet, and there's only been one instance of carbonite before that, which is in this episode of the Clone Wars. She's encasing them in like amber.
Why?
Great question.
There's also younglings in there.
I was doing some reading about that, and from what I understand, they're dead. And those are like the dead bodies of Jedi that can be used to lure out people that they knew or things like that. And I think I read that there's like an episode of Rebels or something where something like that happens.
Oh, sure.
So it's like a tool that the Inquisitors have, and maybe it's just even like a trophy room for them. Yeah.
And you know
Just
what I'll
have
say?
lunch in the dead kid room.
I spilled mayonnaise on Doug's kid. Now I feel really weird.
So does Doug.
So he really does. One thing I liked about this, truly, and we're talking about like side characters and, filling in the blanks of these side characters we don't think about. The original trilogy, something that they do really well is that they set people up that exist in the rebellion and on the side of the Empire that get maybe 1-2 lines maximum, and yet you care a lot about them in the moment that they matter. Couple of examples, and these all tie back to our points here. The Rancor Tamer in episode 5. All he has to do is cry. We didn't need to make a story about the guy who trains Rancors. All I had to know is that this guy is sad because his Rancor died. Or Biggs and Wedge. I don't need a Biggs and Wedge backstory. I know that they're buddies and that they work together on a really hard mission and one of them dies, and that's sad. There are just so many examples of characters who are, it's like, damn, that guy really had a whole arc. Okay, anyways. Or like Grand Moff Tarkin, seeing him in Clone Wars, I'm like, that's sick. That's really cool, because the 1 or 2 lines that they give him in the original trilogy, you're like, that guy's really fascinating. And the only time that they did that with the restraint here was at the very end of episode 4 when they're escaping the ship and there are the 2 rebels that like fly into the place to save them. And then Wade, rest in peace, gets completely owned by an explosive barrel that Reva throws at his ship. And it's like the next scene is mostly focused on the other pilot going, God, fuck, Wade died though. And it's like, that's it. That's all you have to do, Star Wars, to make me care about side characters. I don't need like backstories. Just do that. That's great.
I think what's really interesting about that moment is like Obi-Wan being here in the mix nudges people towards where they need to be in episode 4. And like this feels like this operation, the path was just all about let's just help the Jedi and wasn't yet a rebellion. Maybe it was, and I don't know, I'm getting the timeline wrong. But this feels like a sort of early rebellion moment of like, now we're flying in and we're understanding that that direct confrontation has beneficial outcomes, but also comes with costs that maybe we weren't ready for. And to see Obi-Wan there and like fall back into his role as like the Clone Wars general version of himself.
Yeah.
Showing people like we're at war now. Like we've got to do, especially in episode 5, like this is what that means. Here's what we got to do. Was really interesting. And I think another way that this show like competently fills a gap between episodes 3 and 4.
That's a really good point. And it also made me think of a thing that I hadn't thought about until now about the original trilogy, which is the Rebels are the Rebel Alliance.
Right.
They're an alliance of various rebel groups. And it's like, oh, okay, so this is one of the groups that will probably found the alliance. Like, oh, okay, that's really clever, actually.
One of a collection of people, because it wasn't one cohesive unit like some of the original trilogy makes us think. It's a mishmash of different cultures and groups that were like, we all have this goal that we want.
And we all simp for Mon Mothma. What?
Can you not? For me, it's Admiral Akbar. Let's be
fair.
Really is.
Fair. I have one stray note from 4 I'd like to touch on, which is just because generally the high notes for this series tended to be action scenes. The bit where Obi-Wan is like doing stealth takedowns, flicking his lightsaber on, doing a slash, and then turning it off again in the dark is sick.
So good.
Yeah, there was some discourse about that and the scene in the passageway where it's like flooding with water, where they're basically lifting that stuff from like Star Wars video games and video. Like that scene is from a trailer for The Force Unleashed or The Force Unleashed 2, maybe. And the hallway thing is literally part of Jedi Fallen Order. So it was kind of fun to see the way that this show is paying homage to that. And in the last episode, it had some moments of homage to the cartoons as well. It's like, okay, sure, everything's a part of it. This is great.
Final thoughts, 2 to 4 should you watch at this point in the series? Unfortunately, to me, you're already bought in. And I said this about Boba Fett, and I say it about every show that's like this, where you're watching a long movie. You should know by 2 to 4. By 4, at least, you're like, okay, I want to see how this wraps up. Okay, I got 2 more episodes. I might as well. But I wasn't exactly like jazzed, thrilled. I wanted to see more Anakin and / Vader stuff. That was me coming out of 4. Like at the end when he threatens Reva, and you're like, ooh, this is great. Like, what's gonna happen here?
The performance on that scene was terrible, but you know,
from him.
No, just like from like the forced choke effects of like he's holding his hand, then it cuts to a shot of Reva like clearly just standing on top of a desk, like it just looked like trash.
It's a broader comment too about like the directing of the show. Deborah Chow directed all 6 episodes, and I think she's actually an incredibly competent director. I really like a lot of her work on The Mandalorian, which I think is like the narrative lore center of Star Wars right now. So it's important that they have like a good central director guiding the vision there. But like with Obi-Wan, I don't feel like this looks like the prequels. John, you and I talked about this a little bit off mic a while ago.
Yeah, this is something that comes up in 5 for me, especially. And I have a couple scenes from 3 and 4 that I want to talk about, but I do want to talk about this. There's a lot in this series that feels like your sort of stock standard prestige TV, both in terms of what Six was saying before with some of the dialogue, and then with some of the camera choices, like especially in episode 5 and throughout, there's a lot of handheld camera shots and like kind of shaky cam moments, or the camera like stepping up to look at Obi-Wan in the face or whatever. And those just aren't part of the language of the cinematography of the prequels. That doesn't happen. Like the way that the prequels are shot is pretty, I don't want to try to pass judgment either for or against it, but it can be very static.
It's not very dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not particularly dynamic in that way. There's some moments of dynamism in like the fight scenes, the space battles, stuff like that. But you're not like on the camera guy's shoulder ever, pretty much. The lighting is way different than the prequels, which we've talked about. So it's interesting to see the show look in a way that just like doesn't look like Star Wars to me. And maybe this is how The Mandalorian works, and that's fine because it's like its own corner of Star Wars and it's telling stories about particular characters and whatever. But like, it doesn't look like the prequels. It doesn't look like the original trilogy. And that's kind of weird to me.
I think for me, as of episode 4, if I was watching this on my own, I'd say cut it.
Yeah.
I am immune to sunk cost fallacy. I watched 7 episodes of New Amsterdam and then said I'm done and didn't watch the finale. I'm good. I think in this instance, having seen 5 and 6, I would say don't cut just yet. But at this point, if I had only seen 4, I would have said stop.
Yeah, without the knowledge that the future episodes have things going on, you would have. I too was like, yeah, I really like Obi-Wan, but I myself am a fool, and I do believe in sunk cost fallacy and cannot stop something that I start if it's this short. If it was like 25 episodes, absolutely, I would have been out by now. Are you kidding me? Mm-hmm. But just 2 more, I'm like, I can do it. Especially when this is the benefit of watching week to week.
I think there were 2 scenes that gave me confidence to continue. I was going to watch it all no matter what. But there were 2 scenes that gave me the confidence to be like, okay, I think they will land the plane on this show. I don't think it's going to dazzle me or surprise me. But by the end of episode 4, I was pretty confident that like the things that I figured would have to happen probably would. Like Obi-Wan and Vader are going to fight again. Leia's going to be fine. Reva's going to get redeemed or something like that. Hopefully Qui-Gon will show up. I don't know. Yeah. You kind of know by part 4 the things that you are 90% sure are going to happen. And if you're 90% sure of something at this point, it will happen. And if you want to see that happen, keep watching.
Yeah.
But the 2 scenes that I like thought were really powerful were at the end of part 3, the Vader Obi-Wan fight, when it shifts into Vader like forcing him into the pool of oil and setting him on fire. It's like, oh,
when he lowers the lightsaber to light it. It's like,
so good. Cool. So good. Like the way that this show is able to depict Anakin's absolute contempt for Obi-Wan, and like in a way that that episode A New Hope never could have told this story because Revenge of the Sith didn't exist, right? Mm-hmm. And that's like what is great about this show and what it can do that's new that the original trilogies couldn't do, is it can tell the story about like the harm that was done to Anakin on Obi-Wan's part, the ways that Obi-Wan fucked up and like created Darth Vader and has to account for that in some way. And to see Vader like trying to take specific revenge on Obi-Wan is really an incredible thing to see, and helps you understand like why Vader is the biggest, baddest, scariest guy in town. Like this show does an incredible job of making Darth Vader really scary, which I honestly didn't think could happen, because when he shows up in part 3 at first, it's like, hey, Darth Vader, what's up, bud? And then he starts like choking people and stabbing them and stuff. And you're like, oh, right, you're the bad guy. I forgot. Yikes. And then the other scene that I loved, I cried when Leia held hands with Obi-Wan at the end of part 4.
Very good little shot. Made me feel things.
They were both, there for each other and giving each other, this connection that they needed. It was great. Anyway, let's talk about part 4.
It's the heartless bastard. I'm like, oh, did that happen? Oh.
I shed tears. So 5 and 6. What's going on here? Some more stuff happens, huh? Hayden Christensen's here. What's up, buddy? Let's fight.
5 is the best episode of the show.
Interesting.
And it's mostly for the action and action as characterization. Yeah. We get the payoff for Reva's arc, which is like, no, I've been doing all of this so I can get close enough to kill Darth Vader, which is like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I find that compelling. And then we get the best lightsaber fight in Star Wars. I know, but okay, so I'm sorry to do this, right? Star Wars: The Old Republic, right?
Whoa. Back up, Chief.
So there's a one of the, you can play as a Sith warrior, and one of the specializations is known as the Sith Juggernaut, and it is an attempt to realize what they tried to convey in the original trilogy with Darth Vader, right? The problem with Darth Vader in the original trilogy, they tried to make him this like force of like slow like rage and power, and they did a pretty good job, but they were somewhat handicapped by the fact that suit weighed like 200 pounds. Yeah.
Right.
And so ever since then, Star Wars has been chasing like, how do we, without contradicting that, show how this is scary and sick? And they do it better than anyone ever has in this fight scene, where you have Darth Vader like deflecting stuff by just lifting a hand and force sliding something to the side. You have him just parry, grab, throw, lift, bring back, bring for another sword slash. Just the seamless but vicious flow between saber, force, and just like watching with boredom is incredible.
Yeah.
You're talking about when he's fighting Reva, right?
Yeah. That fight is just phenomenal.
It's so good. Like, watching her try to put a hand on him, and he doesn't even need to put effort into like deflecting her and tossing her around and whatever. It really communicates, this guy's scary. He's one of the most powerful bad guys ever. It was awesome. And that little close up of when he lifts his hand and then it's so
this is also preceded by him literally cribbing, again, pulling from the Star Wars games, doing the Force Unleashed thing and moving a Star Destroyer.
Yeah, pulling a ship out of the sky.
I'm glad we all had used the Force Unleashed touchstone, because immediately I was like, wow, the Force truly has been unleashed.
They showed that in every single ad, and then it was the worst thing about the game because it's the fucking most annoying mission, because the thing keeps moving and then you have to fight enemies. It sucks so much.
Obnoxious. Yeah.
I wish the Force Unleashed was a hidden gem. Somebody talked about that today with me, because they were like, oh, the Obi-Wan keeps reminding me of Force Unleashed. And I was just like, I wish that game was good. But it's
okay. Like, listen, you just swallow some Dramamine and play the game. It's still
pretty
fun.
Much.
You just need some anti-nausea pills.
Right. I love to need to take drugs to play a video game. That fight scene is amazing, and there is some good action in this one. I am here to see Hayden Christensen, and no attempt to de-age him or Ian McGregor at all.
Let's go.
None.
I respect it big time.
I do too, especially coming out of Book of Boba Fett. And, Mandalorian, where it's like, oh, what about CG Luke? We got to, like, de-age people. That's how actors come out. I
will say I think they may have de-aged them a little bit. I think they did a little, but they didn't try to, like, make it obvious.
Hayden Christensen's forehead is pretty rough. I don't know if they did anything to that.
It looks rougher in real life, I think.
Okay. Is that hard life?
I'm sure they've done a little bit of smoothing. This is smooth Hayden.
I think it's a slightly smooth Hayden, but it's tasteful. It's a tasteful smoothing.
But it doesn't look like I can like pull up.
It doesn't look fake.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciated that. And they didn't use a different actor. They didn't use like a CG. Like they just got the actors to play themselves, which is like, it's not that hard for children, for teenagers, for adults to suspend our disbelief and do this. You don't have to like dismantle somebody's memory by recreating them digitally with a computer. It doesn't make the story better. See the Book of Boba Fett. Perfect example right there.
And then they do the thing, like, first of all, they have the flashback fight, which is like, it's a good reminder of what Anakin was like in the prequels and stuff, right? But also a great bridge to then the fight with Reva, because like you see that like as Obi-Wan puts it, that need to prove himself, right? Where like like Darth Vader wins the fight versus Reva and then tosses her lightsaber back to her, does a couple of sword strikes, and then pulls it away and stabs her.
Yeah,
it's so needless, and it's such a good
her.
Yeah.
Flips her, he stabs her. It's fantastic, and he's playing with her a little bit there too, which makes it the more exciting.
I wish Hayden had been able to do more than this. It was great to see him.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was him in some of the Vader scenes. I highly doubt it.
I think some of it was. That's from my understanding. I don't know how much, but he definitely was in the suit for some of it. That's good to hear.
I could tell it was his voice in episode 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other big thing I just had on 5 before we really dig into the meat of where this show ends up is I love seeing Obi-Wan once again think he's helping people out by manipulating young people into doing what he says. Because he's the one who's like, Reva, you should actually probably, if you don't like Vader, then work with me and don't work with Vader. And like, having watched a lot of Clone Wars, I was like, finally they get, and watching the prequels, his fundamental problem is that he puts people in these positions and then doesn't think about the consequence of it or doesn't concern himself with it. And then it bites him in the ass over and over again. So he kind of has a mini Anakin arc with Reva here. By being like, you'll be fine, you can do it. Just fight Vader. Like that's you threw a young person at your freaking nemesis right now. Of course, that's not gonna go well. And I just really like that.
And the cowardice is having her live after that, and not having him have to sit with like, yeah, she instantly got murdered. What did you think was gonna happen?
Yeah,
and not even like, because I think his flaw that is sort of surfaced here in this episode and in the next one is that Obi-Wan doesn't really believe in redemption as like a thing, or doesn't know how to redeem people. And I think that's the issue with Reva, is he like is willing to use her to help everybody get away because he doesn't really think that she can like be good or whatever. And then she makes the choice to turn away from the dark side in the next episode, and he doesn't say sorry for like not helping. He's just like, hey, good job, you're good now. And the kind of a key narrative moment of the next one is him believing what Vader says, which is, I killed Anakin, he's not here anymore, it's just me, Darth Vader. And obviously he has to do that in order to reach his characterization in the original trilogy, when he says Luke, hey, you got to go kill Vader, and is kind of like, oh, okay, guess we could have redeemed that guy. But I wish we could have reflected more on Obi-Wan's flaws, because we kind of come out of this series being like, yeah, he did it, what a great guy. And it's like, not really. He has returned to his goodness somewhat and has resolved to like use his abilities to help people, but he's still kind of a dick.
Yeah, they present pretty much all of his flaws in this that they represent are flaws of his life of hermitage, right? Like, there's not a moment of examination of who he was and who he's trying to return to.
Right, exactly. Like the Obi-Wan of the prequels was not like the perfect guy, and the arc isn't just like become him again.
He's a perfect husband, but you know.
Let's talk about the finale. Let's talk about how in episodes 5 and 6 they are led up front with a warning that, quote, there are certain scenes in this fictional series that some viewers may find upsetting. Really interesting choice of content warning. I know there was a little bit of discourse about this. You don't see the like terminology of in this fictional series, I think. But these are a little bit more upsetting, than the previous episodes. And mostly because they're so fucking dark. Turn a light on, Star Wars. Oh my god. I loved aspects of 5 and 6, but 6 especially just felt like I was watching with the lights off and nobody wanted to turn a single light on, and it was bothering me so much. And I know that's the point. And in the final Vader and Vader and Obi-Wan fight scene, I'm like, yeah, it's in the dark. That's thematically appropriate. And like when their lightsabers light up, they light the room. But it's all gray, dude. This is my thing with streaming TVs. I can't look at shit because it's so just washed out. The contrast is on like 2. I'm like, my TV must be broken. And then I pulled up on my monitor and I'm like, no, this is the darkest looking episode of television I've ever seen. You guys got to get better at this.
No, it's a problem because we don't even really have a super strong sense of where that place is. It's just like, yeah, it's a big dusty rock room where we can like throw stuff at each other. And, you know, Star Wars is like has a variety of places that they go, and there's lots of colors. And Obi-Wan and Anakin's big fight at the end of episode 3, there's freaking lava blasting all over the place, and it's very well lit. I think that's a really good critique of this fight, which is otherwise like pretty dope, I think.
Yeah, it's good. It's colorful. It's fun to look at.
I did think it was kind of stupid when Obi-Wan had wizard powers and could throw a bunch of rocks at Darth Vader or whatever, but hey, you know.
He does have wizard powers.
There is a point there is the line about like the Vader says, "You didn't kill Anakin, I did." And I have some readings of that I don't know if we want to get into right now.
Yeah.
Beyond that is my only part of this entire episode I didn't think sucked.
Okay.
Whoa, you really didn't like this one, huh?
I thought this entire episode was terrible.
Really?
I don't know why we needed like Owen and Beru. Like, I'm happy for them that they got to pull out the 9, but like, I don't know why we needed those characters to have a shootout. I don't know why we didn't have the courage to have Reva just die. We had to have her have this weird like limping action scene. I don't know why Vader, a character whose existence is the proof that you need to finish people off, repeatedly doesn't finish people off.
I know.
I don't like nothing about this. I think is at all good. It feels like it's made of the worst sins of Marvel Disney storytelling, right? I do think where Vader is like, "You didn't kill Anakin, I did." I think that can be good through a certain reading of him being like, "Listen, I've been stewing on this for 10 years, and maybe I had a hand in my own failure." I think that's good. But the way then it's played as Obi-Wan being like, "Oh gosh, you're right. You are not the same person." It's like, no, that's not. I hate this.
I do think like that is a moment where Obi-Wan is like seriously failing Anakin. It's good that he owns up and says he's sorry, but for Darth Vader to be like, "Nah, man, you're good. It was me." And for him to be like, "All right, well, I'll see you later." It's a little stupid. I think that's one reading of it. And I think another reading of it is like, there's so much pain associated with like the Anakin-ness of me that I like have denied it for so long that it's, you know, not even me anymore. There's no hope in trying to get to that part of me because I have like forced it out of myself.
And then the guy who puts you in your position goes, "Oh, okay, cool."
Right. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad that you've completely dissociated from that, and I'm gonna wipe my hands of this. And then for him to go to the Emperor later, which, by the way, awesome to see Ian McDermott here.
Hell yes.
It was great. For him to go to the Emperor and be like, "I'm so mad at Obi-Wan," and the Emperor's like, "You good, bro? Like, relax. Psh, who cares?
We're gonna win.
Keep being a bad guy." All right, I will.
Thanks, Dad.
Kind of funny.
Vader's throne, which we've seen in the comics before, but we never got to really see in the movies. I love that little like throne room.
Mm-hmm.
These are the little details I enjoyed about this finale. Was like, oh, that's kind of neat. Yeah, all right. I think overall the finale is kind of like just a bunch of fight scenes that I agree 6. And maybe this is because you mentioned it to me like as I was starting the episode, but like there are no stakes in any of these fight scenes. We even introduced a young Luke, which some people were theorizing like if they choose to do more between 3 and 4 stuff, this could be the actor who just is Luke from now on. And like there's like the Owen and Beru stuff, and then there's and Reva's there, and then Obi-Wan and Vader, and you're like, nobody here can die, nobody here can get hurt. But what are the stakes? It's like
I was sitting next to my friend Carson, and Reva's walking up, and we both turned to each other and we were like, he can't see a lightsaber, right?
Right. But he does. He does though.
No, he's sleeping. He didn't see it.
He slept through it. He heard it.
maybe I feel like he sees her at some point walking towards him with the lightsaber, but maybe you're right. But like,
I don't think he sees the saber itself.
Either way, it's just like, so there's like a conversation in between scenes in A New Hope where he's like, gosh, everything's so boring here. And he's a beat and he's like, except for that one time when that spooky lady showed up and like chased me through the house. And well, whatever.
Yeah.
She force pushed me off some rocks.
Yeah, I don't know. I really enjoyed watching this episode. I think the Obi-Wan Vader stuff was what I was hoping it would be. I wish it looked a little better. But for me, the stakes of it were like, I want to see Obi-Wan fail to save Darth Vader to show us why Luke needed to be the person to do it. And I think we got that. I think the show could have stamped that a little better, but I think it's there in the text. We'll talk about the Leia stuff, but I think that resolves in a really sweet way. Giving her the holster, and now she's got a little holster on her dress. It's like, yeah, hell yeah, that's the kind of princess you're gonna be. I love it.
And also the great line when he gives her the holster, she's like, it's empty. And
yeah.
McGregor's like, I'm not gonna give you a blaster. You're 10 years old.
Yeah. And then the little seriousness of like, but you won't be forever. It's like, whoa, damn.
Future.
You're right.
Also, you're right. Luke is asleep during that. I just checked. Not asleep. He's knocked out.
He's knocked out. But yeah, the stuff on Tatooine was just strange. Like, the reason to get Reva there is if we think about this idea of like the 6 parts of the series echoing the 6 movies, there's kind of like Obi-Wan failing to redeem Vader in the way that Luke succeeds at it. And then there's Luke like being a part of, even an inactive part of successfully redeeming Reva. And there's something about that I thought was like thematically interesting. I think it's undermined by the fact that we stabbed her in the gut last episode and now she's walking around like she's fine and we don't really address that.
No, she's doing like the Uncharted 1 walk where it's like, oh, Drake got wounded.
Yeah.
You have to slow walk for the next hour of this game.
Yeah. And then I was undecided on what I liked about the Owen and Beru stuff was seeing them not just as, you know, the kind of like lame parents from A New Hope, but competent bodyguards for this very important young child. It did feel like a kind of strange plot moment for Obi-Wan to be like, all right, seems like you guys got it. I'm out of here. Because it's like, do we? There was an Inquisitor here. Maybe you should stick around for a little bit, but I don't know. That got a little hairy.
His gig at the beginning of the series is where I thought he would stay, which is like, I live somewhat close to you guys, just close enough to see Luke like from a distance if something happens, but I'm not involved in his life. I thought that was enough. But then at the end, he's like, no, I have to go to literally where I was in A New Hope. I can't have this cool cave anymore. I have to go to this canyon.
Right.
I must become Ben. So a lot of the finale is about people just like walking into their episode 4 personas, basically. You know, Leia comes back with the holster and they're like, that's kind of weird. And she does, of course, have to put the hair things on, but they're not on the side of her head. They're on the top, the little things from episode 4, the famous Leia hair, because you can't just have something be a background detail. It has to be like looked at and explained.
Yep.
You have to have Owen and Beru be like, we're going to continue to be moisture farmers, and Obi-Wan's not going to be here. He has to go. Reva has to walk herself out of the narrative. I wonder who the hell is going to find her Inquisitor lightsaber and where that got left, because that's weird to just leave that in the middle, like nearby.
Imagine in episode 9, Rey's digging the hole to bury the lightsaber she buries, and she's like, whoa.
What's this?
Oh,
There's
this
a
one's
lot of
taken. My
lightsaber
bad.
burying out here.
Yeah.
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 It's the third bit, because there's also in episode 1 when the other Jedi, the Softy brother, he's like, everyone's like, bury your lightsaber. It's what everyone does. We bury them.
Yeah, there's a big pit of buried lightsabers over there.
I bet you there is. And then Obi-Wan, the one that got me the most. I really didn't think they were gonna do it, but right before he leaves, Owen is like, you should go say hi to him. You should go meet Luke. And he goes up to him and he says, hello there. And literally Magellan, me, and like 5 other people across the internet were like, yo, he did the thing.
Whereas I just fucking shrank in my chair.
Yeah. 6 episodes.
You can see it on
right
you
amount of
and
payoff.
you can see it on Ewan McGregor's face that he was like,
Finally.
Are you not entertained?
Listen, I love that line, right? I just
It's
sneaking
funnier in
it in as
episode 3, obviously.
right. And if you hadn't made it literally the last line of the series, where it feels like it feels mandatory, if you'd had it be his reaction to Leia doing something unexpected, then I'd be here for it. But also, shout outs, didn't mention him, doesn't matter at all. Shout outs to the mercenary with the tie dye shirt. Tie dye in Star Wars, that rules.
Love tie dye.
Yeah.
He's now said it a total of 3 times. I just realized he actually says it in A New Hope also. So now he said it in A New Hope, in Revenge of the Sith when he lands on Grievous and them, and in fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi. And then you're like, okay, that's enough nostalgia for now. I get it. Like Star Wars, like Obi-Wan's all done. Wrap it up, boys. And then he goes to the canyon and he sees Qui-Gon Jinn, and that's fucking actually Liam Neeson in the outfit. I died. He looks older.
He does.
Yeah.
But I do like him hand on the hips being like, took you long enough, you dumbass.
I hated that line, to be honest.
It's one line too much. It's one push too far into like, guys, get it? Did you like it? And I'm like,
that's
no.
that comic book writing that Six was talking about. Took you long enough.
Yeah.
I don't know. Because that's also not really a Qui-Gon thing. I don't.
But there's no Qui-Gon thing. He exists in one movie.
I mean,
Qui-Gon's great.
Qui-Gon thing would be looking for a rules lawyer way to care about slavery.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. You know, thanks for the fan service. Qui-Gon is probably one of my favorite Star Wars characters from the movies. But what? Huh? Why is he here? He's not doing anything. Or just riding off into the sunset to hang out, I guess. It's kind of cool.
Yeah. He goes off to his little shack in the desert. This is the thing.
I really loved these ending interactions that Obi-Wan has with Leia and Luke, and the show ultimately being about, on some level, like, yeah, Obi-Wan and Anakin's relationship is not going to be salvaged. There's not a way that these brothers can like reconnect and find what they had, but Obi-Wan is able to like invest in and love Anakin's kids and like set them on the path towards ultimately saving their father and saving the galaxy. Like Obi-Wan giving Leia both the knowledge that like she comes from great parents, but also the perspective to understand that she has great parents with her now and has a set of duties and the strength to fulfill them is like such a cool moment. And then him finally being able to give Luke the ship and give him that yearning to be out in space and among the stars and among the wars is really awesome. I like that a lot. And then shout out to Hayden Christensen's performance in the Darth Vader mask when it gets cut open and we just see one rageful eye, and it's so good and scary. I thought he really crushed that.
He looked so pissed.
Pissed. I hate you.
I think my conclusion on it is the fight scene in episode 5 is worth half paying attention to the first 4 episodes for, and I guess at that point you should probably finish it. You don't have to, but if you want to, go ahead and watch episode 6.
Fair.
I also appreciate it when the shows don't build to another season. Like, a lot of these miniseries are like, oh, we could do a season 2, or we could just end it. And it's like, I'm fully done. I don't actually need more Reva. If I want more Inquisitors, I'll watch Rebels. If I want more Obi-Wan, I have, weird, all 6 movies. Like,
I've heard buzz that there's going to be a Reva thing.
They make every character, every time there's a good character, they try to make them a thing. At some point, like, Cassian Andor is my line. That's as far as I'm willing to go, guys. Any more obscure than that, like, unless you do a Quinlan Voss show, then I'm here to talk and consult me.
I'd watch a Reva show. I don't know what story you could possibly tell.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
I mean, episode 1, she just digs the lightsaber back up. This is just what these shows do.
Yeah. It's just like, this is why we need to start telling Star Wars stories the way that KOTOR does it, where it's like, listen, it's like 4,000 years in the past. Now we can do whatever we want. And anybody can be anything, kill anybody, and it's great.
They're afraid of doing that, or they can't do that. You know, it's a business, and they need to sell more toys based on the stuff that you like, and more outfits for the characters that you like.
I know, but it just means that we're going to get years and years of, hey, remember Boba Fett? Now he's a crime boss.
I would love that. Wouldn't it be great if they did a show where Boba Fett was actually a crime boss?
Yeah, you're right.
I'm still sour about Book of Boba Fett. I re-soured on it recently.
I mean, it's bad. It's a good reason to be sour on it.
Magellan, for the folks, should you watch Obi-Wan Kenobi on Disney Plus?
I really feel like I'm not a person who can answer that for everybody. But I will answer that for myself and say that the experience of watching this show, talking about it with people, having a Star Wars thing that was new, but also like reminded me of these Star Wars things that I love, was really special for me, and like made me feel like, yeah, I want to replay some games. I want to like look at the movies again. I want to think about Star Wars more. And I'm walking away from it having scenes and character beats from this show that like don't add brand new stuff, but add some texture to things from episode 4 that I think now that they're here, I'm glad that they're here, and it kind of feels like if I were to rewatch episode 4 now, it might make it a somewhat richer experience, because it definitely is a little jarring to watch episode 4 having seen episode 3, and to think about like how much tissue isn't connecting the two, because that couldn't have possibly happened in the way that these things were written. So as someone who is already a Star Wars fan and doesn't really like the sort of zeitgeist thing of like, what are they going to reveal in the next one? Why haven't they done this? Blah, 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 blah. I really liked Obi-Wan. I would say watch it. But I understand the reservations about it.
Fair enough. 6, should you watch Obi-Wan Kenobi?
If you're a Star Wars fan, meh. If you're not a Star Wars fan, no.
Yeah, that's fair.
If you're my answer, if you're a Star Wars fan, there are things you'll be like, whoa, that's really interesting. Oh, ooh. It might make you lead to you checking out some other Star Wars media, like the games. That's great. You want to see more Ian McGregor, a little bit of Hayden Christensen? Sure. Otherwise, this is not, this isn't for you. Don't bother with it. Easy, done and done. 6, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate
Thank you so much
Can
for
plug
having
your
me.
stuff?
Sure. You can find me on Twitter at Sixdettmar, SIXDETTMAR. And you can find my work at scanlinemedia.com or patreon.com/scanlinemedia. I do a lot of podcasts. I occasionally stream.
Amazing. Magellan, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on another podcast called Super Smash Echoes that I do with my friend Justin, where we talk about video games once a month that are related to Super Smash Brothers in some way. It's a sort of video game book club with a central organizing premise. Super Smash Echoes. Check us out. Alan, what about you?
I'm on a podcast with 6 on ScanlineMedia.com called The Huntress Quorum, where we talk about Monster Hunter monsters and whether or not they are friends or foes. Just kidding. They're all really good, mostly. And we have co-hosts on these days who mostly want us to keep all of them. We used to do it as a Pokemon podcast called The Johto Quorum. It's a great time. That can be found at ScanlineMedia.com, like I said. Finally, let's talk about what we're watching next month. There isn't a ton of new TV coming out in July of 2022, so we're going just a couple months back. We're keeping things current, but not hyper current, like with Obi-Wan, which came out, looks at watch today. So for July, we're heading over to Netflix, and Magellan and I are going to be checking out Heartstopper, the adaptation of a comic book delivered in 8 chapters over on Netflix. It's about 2 young British boy teens who fall in love. And we're very excited to talk about it. It's going to be a great time. We're going to be talking about the whole entirety of Heartstopper in July. Check it out. It's should you watch. John, should I just go down the plug zone real quick?
Sure.
Okay, folks. We have a couple ways you can contact us. Chatzpod@gmail.com. That's our email address. We're on Twitter at Chatzpod. We're on Reddit, r/Chatzpod. If you like Should You Watch, please consider rating us on Apple Podcasts or your podcast platform of choice. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're listening to us there. If you want to support us financially, it's patreon.com/Chatzpod. All sorts of bonus content over there for the folks. If you are a $5 patron, which is our highest tier of magical patronage, you get thanked at the end of every main feed episode. And that today includes Arthur, Chloe, Jen, Kat, Lee, Magellan's mom, Marcus, Marin, Michael, Nick and Pat of the Brothers in Infinite War, Fendon, Six, hey,
Hi.
and Stefan. Thank you very much for your support. Chatzpod.com is the resource to find all things chats, and at Camillastrator is the wonderful artist Camilla who did our podcast art. Check out her work over on all the socials. That's what we got, folks. Thank you so very much for listening to this episode of Should You Watch, where we'll keep watching so you know if you should.
May the Force blow your mind.
Hello there. You got a Star Wars thing?
Roger.
Yes! Perfect. Good job. My favorite one.